What up, Muggles? This is Firebyrd, and I'm here with Ridgeback.
Still being the ridgiest Ridgeback of all the Ridgebacks.
And you're listening to the Dusty Cauldron. Today we are going to be doing an Ickle Firsties episode because Ridgeback is ready to read book number 5. So you guys know the drill. We start with predictions on what you think is going to be different in the books than in the movies. So what's prediction number 1?
Well, let's start with a more generalized one, maybe. This one, the first one that comes to mind is, the books are growing. We're obviously aging with the reader. I feel like book 5 is going to be very dark in tone, and not just like situations, but more like the way the author describes the atmosphere, the way we have a lot of like brightness when we're first getting Hogwarts through the first few books. And I feel like even though it should be bright and we feel like we're expecting it bright, there's going to be this hint of darkness that's floating around. Like it's going to be reflected in the atmosphere and reflected in a lot of what we hear described about the world we're in. So that's generally my first one. It's more of a general one for the whole book.
Would you say, like, you think it's going to be darker than, like, the sort of creeping darkness that you see in the movies? Like, it'll be more insidious?
Yes, because I feel like the books have more room to go farther with that than sometimes movie directors can go. I mean, the audience they're journeying towards is still young, but an older audience that's viewing with it as they get older. And I think they're still trying to hold on to bring younger audiences in, because the movies come out faster now. Because it's not like watching a book. They can commit like 8 hours, and they've already seen books 1 through 4.
That's fair.
So they are still keeping it light because they know if a younger viewer sees it, the younger viewer is going to get through books 1 through 4 faster than a reader will get through books 1 through 4. Even a very passionate reader, I think the speed is light years. Like it's just so much faster.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, I'm interested to see after you've read the book, like kind of how you feel about that. What's your next prediction?
My next one is more family oriented. It's book 5. We've seen movie 5. Kind of know what's coming. But I feel like with book 3 and book 4, we see Sirius as this character. He kind of comes in, he's the outlaw. Then he's kind of like the fun uncle. And I think in this book, we see him grow into being the father figure Harry needs just in time for that to go so well for him in the future.
Re-traumatize.
Yeah. We need more trauma for Harry, because Harry's not traumatized enough. I mean, he's the main character. That's what's going to happen. But yeah, I feel like we're going to see Sirius really grow into that father figure role just in time for it to have an immediate impact on Harry's future and Harry's trauma and the stuff he's dealing with. So yeah, Sirius growing into that father figure role. Looking back on the movie, I don't remember if there was really a change other than, I felt like he had love for Harry, but I don't remember specific instances where I felt like he was really trying to be a father figure to Harry. And that's what I think is going to be different in the book than in the movie. Because, again, the movies move at warp speed. Mm-hmm. Trying to develop this relationship adds time, and they're still locked. Back then, they were locked in this very much. Movies got to be 1.5 hours, 2 hours max. So we got to cut stuff. And some relationships we can sacrifice because it won't affect his journey as much in there. So I could be wrong.
I really want to dig into that one, but I feel like I can't touch anything until after you've read the book.
Sounds like we have a long conversation coming up after I've read the book.
I'm excited. It's going to be great. Okay, what's prediction number 3?
Oh, this one. I hate Umbridge in the movie. I'm just going to start with that. Let's just not even beat around any bushes here. Let's just lay that right out there. I hate her. She is a guard at a internment camp to me. She is horrible. And I was thinking about the book, and I'm like, she can't be likable in the book. She has to be worse. And I think she's so worse that what we see in the movie is actually a toned down version of her. I think she's how do I put it? I think she's Ralph Fiennes from Schindler's List. I think she's that bad in the book. Mm-hmm. And she's not scary. The kids really get exposed to a really cruel human being who revels in it and feels like she's doing everything right. Basically a current Republican. Anyways, that's what I'm thinking. You'll notice I put pauses there so I could cut that out. There are people who run for political office currently who I see them having pictures of Umbridge around their mirror when they wake up in the morning to do their makeup. And I'm not saying they're just women. I'm saying, like, let's just be real. Matt Gaetz has a picture of Umbridge hanging around his mirror in the morning.
I think Amy Conan Barrett might as well. And similar to how Umbridge reads, I think that Amy Conan Barrett, I don't even care that I'm saying her name wrong. Literally don't care. She doesn't deserve it. Truly believe she's right.
You're talking about Amy Gomer Carrot?
Yeah.
Got it. Amy Gomer Carrot.
That dumb bitch. Kind of like dumb bitch from the series. Yeah. She, I think, like Umbridge, genuinely believes in the cause no matter how warped it is, and genuinely believes that they're doing the right thing.
Well, there's some reasons why it's called fantasy. So, it's not reality. And boy, we're going to pull some hate on this one, aren't we? It's just like not even pretending. We're just like, punch.
If they made it past the feminist analysis of Hermione Granger's choices, and they made it past the defense of the fact that there is anti-Semitic undertones to the book, this is not going to bother them.
Oh, good.
The people that would be bothered by this stopped listening on episode 2 or 3. I can't remember which one now we recorded with.
Sure.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was beautiful. That was really two knowledgeable witches hanging around the cauldron, letting the realities drop like they're hot. I mean, it was pretty good.
There were some heavy hammers in that episode. So, anyone who would be offended by calling out the Supreme Court, they've left already.
Yeah, they're not here. Yeah. And if you are still here, I'm a little impressed.
And concerned. You may want to see someone about the cognitive dissonance that you have going on. Because if you agree with the choices that we're making fun of, and you're still listening to this podcast, what's going on internally? Like, you're not putting 2 and 2 together? You think 2 + 2 is 7? Like, don't talk to me about it. I don't want to know, but maybe go talk to someone about that.
I'm intrigued, and I would love to hear their comments. Honestly, they're of two minds of the thing, so,
Literally, yeah.
It's like they agree, and then they hate us. But they agree, but then they hate you. And then they disagree, but then they're sorry.
Maybe they're hate listening. I don't know.
They're hate listening.
On that note, we're going to send Ridgeback off, and he's going to read book number 5. Bye. And then when we come back, we're going to dig into whether or not these predictions were accurate, and we might spend some more time spinning on the correlations between Umbridge and current things happening in the U.S. government. See you soon.
This podcast is sponsored by Slug and Jiggers. As apothecaries go, you could try Biggins and Squirts, Magical Margot's Meticulous Medicines, or Bob's Potions, but none have the inventory of Slug and Jiggers Apothecary. With our patent-pending, non-fatal slug juice extraction contraption, we have the best slugs for your slug. Get it? Hoo-hoo! One can never bet on a subpar ingredients. Do you want to mix 4-week-old newt eyes into your artisan doxicide spray? Of course not. With our patent-pending Newt Eye Protector Eye, we can guarantee your newt eyes will be as fresh as, well, the day we plucked them. There's this and that, and all our well-crafted patent-pending techniques and machines are, well, patent-pending. But our top-of-the-line service is guaranteed. Stop in today at Slug and Jiggers located in Diagon Alley and take advantage of our gift cricket program. Catch a gallon for a galleon. You can't make this up. We'll see you soon.
We're back. Ridgeback just finished reading book 5, so we are going to check in on the predictions that he made and whether or not they came true. So if you remember from earlier in the episode, you predicted that Sirius will grow into his father role. How do you feel about that prediction?
He definitely did. He really kind of took it to heart. Like, he clearly saw himself as Harry's father, even though from an execution standpoint, he still didn't quite understand what that meant, but like he definitely grew into it in that he fully accepted it. I don't think he understood the meaning of being a father figure, you know, because he had to be so distant and so far away.
And like how to parent.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he
had no
was
clue.
basically a child when he went to prison and then had Arrested Development in prison.
So he's got exactly, Arrested Development.
No.
And trauma from that, and and then being surrounded by, you know, having to work with someone like Snape, who he clearly doesn't like.
Snape.
Dumbledore.
Yeah, no. I think that he did, but I think subconsciously a little piece of him didn't. Because subconsciously, a little piece of him still identifies Harry as James, which is apparent in the final scene at the Ministry where he literally calls him James.
Yeah.
So there's like a little tiny piece of him that I would argue did not buy into like the father figure.
Yeah, I think I don't think he was. What came to mind in my head was that maybe he was struggling with being his friend and being a father figure, and I don't think that was the issue. I think it's more like you said, where he couldn't really see the difference. Mm-hmm. He couldn't save James. He was trying to save Harry. Yeah. And in that way, he was saving James. And that may not totally be related, but in my mind, the reason why I'm thinking of it that way is because he did see him as something between what James being his friend and him being his basically son. He should have been the one raising Harry. So I think that, like you said, with the Arrested Development, that's all broken because he doesn't know how. He's had to fend for himself. He's been tortured. I mean, good Lord, what a fucking horrible place to send anybody if they are going to Azkaban. They're going to come out broken. You're not considering rehabilitation, so
it's the opposite of rehabilitation.
So
which is pretty messed up as a concept.
Yeah.
Like, I get like this idea. Like prison shouldn't be a vacation.
True.
Like someone needs to like pay their dues or whatever. What are they paying by being like psychically tortured for years?
Because you're basically making them worse.
Yeah, you're making a more dangerous criminal.
You know.
I guess though, like, I don't know that it's a thing that someone is like, oh, you get 2 years in Azkaban. It's like, no, everyone like goes there for life. So maybe that's why they don't care, because they're like, well, it doesn't matter if they become crazier because they're never getting out.
Yeah,
like,
and that never happens. Nobody ever just doesn't break it.
I mean, before Sirius, no one had ever escaped.
Yeah. Yeah, it's given time, people figure it out. It's because the whole thing is just, it's one huge torture device, you know? And
it's really dark.
Yeah, it's compared to everything else in the series. Well, I mean, the series ages, it gets darker, so the tone of Azkaban sliding in there kind of makes sense. But we get Azkaban and Dementors in book 3.
But that's like the start of the turn, and then it doesn't go fully like, oh, maybe this isn't necessarily a children's series until book 4 when you have your first character death.
Sure.
Well, first like on screen, quote unquote, on the page.
But it's like, it's such a, we're kind of off topic a little bit, and I apologize, but it's kind of such a brusque entrance. You know, it's like, oh, hey, things are getting darker. Oh, by the way, kids, don't go to jail because you'll never leave and we'll destroy your fucking soul.
I would argue, though.
Here's Dorothy Umbridge.
Dorothy. Dolores.
Yeah, she might
really broke me.
Only thing I care about her is the fact that last name basically means the same word as fuck or screw you. It's a dirty word in my language. I don't give a shit what her first name was because no one cared.
That's fair.
It was the fact it was Umbridge.
Yeah, which like spelled differently is a word and fits her personality to a T. But a lot of people just call her like bitch, and I'm like, yeah, that's
bitch makes sense. Yeah, because she goes bitch. Like you just say it. That's what you just started. Bitch, bitch.
I would love to see like a post 2020 rendition where someone's just following her around with a mask every time she makes that noise. Like, put this on, you might be contagious.
You might have COVID.
Yeah.
They do. We call them Karens.
They could have named her Karen.
Oh my god.
Karen hadn't
Umbridge.
come into its vogue when the books came out.
But imagine if she had been called Karen every Potterhead who heard the word Karen, thought of Umbridge, and went, "Yep, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. That makes perfect sense."
Yeah.
Karen Umbridge, ladies and gentlemen.
Taking us back to Sirius.
Yeah.
I think that he made like efforts, like particularly when he has like fights with Molly over like wanting to do the right thing for Harry and like what he thinks is the best path forward. Like that shows an air of the like fatherly feelings. Or maybe it just shows possessive. I don't know. But to me, I read it as like feeling paternal love.
Sure. But then to support your point about his mixing up of James and what was he, father figure? Was he trying to be a friend? There's that whole scene with Snape where he doesn't care about anything. He's going to take Snape. Like that argument escalates so quickly between Snape and Sirius, and like Harry's there and Harry can't stop him from doing it. Molly almost can't stop him from like they were gonna like kill each other. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if Snape would have killed Sirius. I don't think he could.
I think if you provoked him enough.
With Harry there?
Snape doesn't like Harry.
Snape doesn't like Harry, but Snape's under Dumbledore's thumb, and Harry already was present when his mom died. I don't know how cruel Snape really is.
I don't think he would have thought about it. Like, I'm not trying to say Snape is an asshole, but I think in the heat of the moment, being attacked by someone who was a bully for years in his life, I don't think he would care what Harry thought about it.
Yeah.
He would act first, think about it later. And, like, if he actually had a moment to think, like, is this going to traumatize Harry? I don't think he'd care about the answer to the question. I actually don't think Voldemort, wow, there's a Freudian slip because I meant to say Dumbledore, would care about Harry's emotional well-being. Like, he proves that throughout the series. He's so focused on raising his pig for slaughter that he keeps sending him back to an abusive home.
And thinking about it from a fanfiction UA perspective, that could have also, if something had happened to Sirius and they broke out in a fight and Snape did something really bad to Sirius, that could have been the first time that Harry could have said Avada Kedavra and meant it.
Yeah, no, I think
and
that would
potentially
be a major
killed
turning
Snape
point
right there.
for Harry. For our friend from another episode, Stray, who loves dark Harry stories, like that's a perfect linchpin moment to write a dark Harry fic.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because that's a perfect point for a dark timeline to just branch. Mm-hmm. Is someone Molly didn't get there soon enough. Sirius lost his temper too quickly. Mm-hmm. Snape strikes him down with something.
Secum subtract. I can never say that spell, but
nasty.
Like his spell that like cuts you.
Yeah.
Spoiler, that's in the next book.
That's okay. And then Harry just flips because this is his next family member being cut down by a member of the Dark Order.
Yeah, that's Death Eaters.
Death Eaters, sorry.
I like the Dark Order.
Being cut down by a member of the Sith.
The
Wizard Sith.
Okay, this is way off topic for our what are we doing? This is a podcast. Okay, this is way off topic for our podcast. But is it true there can only be one Sith at a time?
There's two. There is the Master and the Apprentice.
And that's it?
That's how they're supposed to do it. Doesn't mean I think if Star Wars fans are listening to this, all three of them, they would probably say, they probably have the information that I don't have. As far as I know, there can only be the Master and the Apprentice. But my brain says I think there's got to be other ones out there.
But there can be unlimited Jedis.
But there can be unlimited Jedis.
That is the stupidest setup I've ever heard.
And
I literally, a coworker said this to me,
think that's why
I called them a liar. I was like, you are trying to trick me just because you know I won't watch those movies. Like, I was so sure they were messing with me.
I think that's why there's actually more. Because I've seen...
But there is, like, in the lore or the canon, is like, there can only be two.
That's the first thing I heard. The Clone Wars, I believe, introduces multiple. Because there's Dooku, there's Palpatine, Darth Maul is technically still around. Oh, and there's what's her name? There's this one gal who has two lightsabers, and she's Ventress, Saji Ventress. So there's four right there. So
all alive at the same time.
I think it's not just one Master, one Sith. It's just there is a master and an apprentice and a master and an apprentice and a master and an apprentice. So I think there's always, and that's how the Jedi work. When you're training as a Jedi, you're training under a single master. So I think it's actually a mirror effect. So in Sith, there is a master and apprentice. If you find one, there's usually another.
I actually wish we got more of the apprentice relationship in Harry Potter, because it is like alluded to.
Yeah.
Like Snape is a potions master, which means that he apprenticed under someone to gain his mastery. I believe Minerva is a master of transfiguration. I imagine that she apprenticed under Albus Dumbledore, but we don't get any information on that, or even like how that works.
Right.
It gets fleshed out quite a bit in fan fiction, but never in canon. And it just, I think, would have been really interesting to include more of that. Also because it gives more like paths post graduation, because it's like basically you're gonna work for the Ministry or you're gonna die.
Well, Snape's master would have probably been Slughorn, wouldn't it?
Maybe.
He was a big potion guy, and he was there for a long time. I could see him probably apprenticing under him.
Potentially, though, like with what we know of backstory, it seems like he did leave Hogwarts. So then I would assume apprenticing under someone else, but I don't really understand how it works. We don't get enough information.
There must be some apprenticeship, though, because you just don't get dubbed the master.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's called master of the dark arts.
Maybe a little bit more.
You're just a dark arts professor.
Okay. So, first prediction, successful.
I feel like it was, for the most part.
Second prediction, the overall atmosphere of Book 5 will be noticeably darker due to the growing with the readers that sort of happened in the series. How do you feel about that?
I feel like that was a pretty easy one, because it was definitely very noticeably darker from Harry all the way out into the world. I mean, Harry is more rage-filled as he's maturing, and his hormones are raging. He's starting to have trouble managing his rage, which he has a lot of rage. I mean, he has so much little information, and I think does that happen in that one? I don't remember. I just know that I remember his rage, which comes out a lot of like physical altercations, which kind of makes sense from what he knows growing up. That's how he would deal with that.
Do you mean like
from physical abuse?
Verbal?
Well, no. I thought he has, like him, and I thought Malfoy at one point got in an altercation at some point.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that he had no physical altercations. I'm arguing that they were mostly verbal altercations. And then for your harkening back to childhood, we don't actually have any proof that the Dursleys ever hit him. It's just implied with the treatment. I would be very surprised if Vernon never laid a hand on him.
I would be surprised if he didn't either.
Yeah.
I was also thinking of the one with Malfoy and George and Harry at the Quidditch game, where they tore into each other, and I think there were some throws thrown there. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a good point.
But it definitely was more verbal than anything else, and Harry was constantly lashing at everybody.
Yeah.
Like, except Dumbledore? No, he kind of lashed at Dumbledore,
he had
too.
a lot of, like, hate for Dumbledore.
He had rage.
Particularly because Dumbledore was, like, giving him the cold shoulder, so then it was, like, building.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it definitely darkened. And you feel it. I mean, I think you feel it almost from page 7, 8. It's obvious. I can't remember what happens now, but I feel like it was pretty obvious. It was just like is it raining outside? It feels gray all of a sudden. It was dark. And you get that same feeling in the movies too. The colors of the movies start muting about 5. I think 5 they start muting until like Deathly Hallows, where they're almost in like blue-gray tones. Mm-hmm. Like even in the final battle, they're practically in blue-gray tones.
It's so dark, yeah.
So they really lose all their color. So yeah, it held up. I feel like that was an easy one. Having seen the movies, I knew that was going to happen. I tried to distance myself from it, but yeah, it was going to do it. But I was curious to see how dark it got. Fast it got fairly dark. It was kind of like a lot of deception, like creature and crap he was doing behind the scenes, and what Harry was going through at Hogwarts, and what the physical abuse he went through with Umbridge. That was horrible. That was just straight up cruel. That wasn't even.
She should have gone to jail for that.
Yeah, and somehow,
Well, it's because of when the ministry was overtaken.
It was pretty shit. I was pretty grumpy about that.
Yeah. I would argue too that like it's darker than like the average youth reader realizes, because when I read it the very first time, I was a teen and I had no real concept of what PTSD was. And so I did not truly understand the depth of what Harry was actually going through the very first time I read it. And I would imagine that is a common experience for a lot of young readers reading it the first time. So they get like a taste of the fact that it's dark, but it takes like knowledge and life experience to really know how dark that book was.
Yeah.
And like cold, because it's like you see this child struggling.
Yeah.
And raging against PTSD, and how many professors turned a blind eye to that.
Oh yeah, that was
the closest we get to a piece of comfort is McGonagall giving him that cookie when he had an outburst in Umbridge's class. Like, let's not get any psychological care for this. Let's give him a ginger newt. Like,
what was interesting about that too was you could see McGonagall wanted to do more. But she was handicapped by an overbearing government. And they all were. Like, they literally couldn't do more because the government had set rules saying and treating like how they were all under their own problems that they couldn't really help him. Which made me feel like comparisons to where, like, we have kids who get stuck, or years ago were stuck in situations like that. And rules and stuff didn't exist. So, like, they couldn't get the help they want. You know? I don't know. It's really a direct correlation. But sometimes I thought it was interesting that the government was creating problems for everybody. Like the government in place, the Ministry of Magic, was literally helping nobody. It did nothing but serve its own ends. And that was really disturbing.
It's kind of fascinating to me that even if you take everything that has happened in the real world and just pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
Have children grow up reading these books and books like this and wonder why they don't trust the government.
Fair. That's fair.
Okay. I do think that was a successful prediction. I also think it was a little bit cheating, but we'll let it go.
It was. Yeah. It was. I'm not even going to pretend it wasn't. It was cheating.
And you came off of kind of a rough one. Like, the book before really wasn't your tea. So I think that, like, trying to set predictions for this one was more of a challenge than it has been for other books, because you were a little, like, I wouldn't fully say burnt, but you definitely weren't as, like, excited to go on to the next book.
It was like trying to hit home runs with a corked bat. It was really cheating. I knew it. I went in knowing I was swinging with a corked bat on that one. So.
Do you remember when we went to that one baseball game? The only baseball game I have seen in person in at least 10 years. And they freaking had a corked bat. I'm like, you were literally like minor league team, like you play professionally.
Oh, that's right.
And you're freaking cheating, and you got caught.
That was crazy. They totally caught, and it's happening more and more. We've seen it in the majors this year too.
What
People
the heck?
magically getting corked bats. It's like,
why do you own one at all?
What are you doing?
Why would you even practice with a corked bat?
The only reason I knew why they have bats like that is so that people can swing faster with it in practice, and I think it's because it's not as heavy, so it doesn't wear them out.
What are you practicing? You're
practicing accidentally putting a corked bat in your hands when you go up to the plate.
You hit these so far, but you hit it with a bat that you can't play with. So what's the freaking point? Anyway, yes, you did swing with a corked bat.
I was a little confused about that one.
Yeah. All right. So your final prediction was that Umbridge will be more cruel than what we saw in the film. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Of course, they're not going to show her torturing children.
Oh God. Yeah, because they couldn't. They would have jumped the rating.
Yeah.
And they have to think about the rating, so they have to like allude to things and suggest things without deliberately showing it. I mean, you couldn't really show that. I mean, wasn't his arm bleeding from it? Mm-hmm. That's disturbing. That's disturbing stuff. And she was just horrible.
Well, and she actually did it to so many students. I think they do keep a scene where Fred and George are comforting a small child, but they really don't get into it. And it's the fact that 11-year-old child also was tortured.
Yeah. I remember that. That was why they were... Yes, I remember that scene. And I knew that Umbridge had done something to her, but I didn't feel like, because they didn't have that scene.
They don't really ever show.
They show it like once, right? Like we get
With
like
Harry.
the first hit with Harry, and then that's it. They don't keep.
And it's like really they did it to like so many of the students. She, the individual person responsible for this, Umbridge.
And the scene with the kid in the office trying to rat Harry out with the broken out face.
Oh, Marietta.
Was that in the film?
No.
I didn't think so.
I don't think Marietta is in the film full stop.
And that's brutal.
And that's like, she gets a lot of hate, right? Like, she turned them in. She was given Veritaserum. Yeah. Like, what was she supposed to do? She
was going to say the truth no matter what she did.
Not to mention, even if she hadn't been given it, like, if Umbridge was threatening her mother's job at the ministry, like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
And she's supposed to let her mom lose her job to protect a club.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, to her, I don't know that it felt like, oh, I've got to go to this and learn this to save my life, because she's always being fed the rhetoric that Harry's a liar. So she's going because her friend Cho wants to go. Not because she's like, oh, I've got to go get this information because Harry's right and we could die at any minute.
Right.
So I don't think that the club would have felt serious, but your mother losing her job would feel pretty serious.
And they used it. I mean, they were using everything. They were, I mean, she was like... the way they were bending rules to get what they wanted was disgusting. Because Umbridge was like, I remember at one point when I was reading it, Umbridge literally said, well, we don't need her to say it because she told me and that's good enough. And it's like, no, she kind of has to say it on record and with witnesses or something so that it's a legal statement that was taken not under duress, but then they didn't care about anything being under duress. So it was, it was just pretty disturbing.
We could do a whole episode about how convoluted and non-working the legal system is in Harry Potter, but
yeah, it seems rather handicapped, like by. Yeah. Not understanding, I think
human rights,
and how they should treat people. It's like they get a little too free with the power, with the magic sometimes with that. So,
speaking of Umbridge and like sort of hearkening back to your previous prediction, she has the darkest moment in the series, though. As just a Harry Potter reader, you may not realize that she does.
Yeah.
Because according to Centaur lore, when they ran off with her in the forest, they probably essayed her.
Oh, no.
That's what a lot of lore says Centaurs do to women if they catch them.
Oh, no.
And Hermione just, said you can have her, basically.
Oh,
and Hermione, who knows everything written in every book ever.
Oh, she knows what happened to her.
Hermione can be vindictive as shit.
Because Umbridge never comes back, does she?
No, she does.
She does.
But she is laying in the hospital bed, twitching with fear, and if anyone makes a noise that sounds like hooves, which Ron does to freak her out, she loses her shit.
Oh, damn. Oh, my God. It was a horse train.
Oh no, I don't want to think about it. But that's
wrong.
The darkest.
That's pretty dark, and I mean, even for her, that's too far. Even for her, I mean, that's just bad. I mean, that's wrong. You can't do that to somebody. So maybe we can just assume that they drug her around. None of that gets better.
Right? It's like, okay, maybe she
was punished.
Spares a little trauma, but she still has physical trauma, right?
She is traumatized. They traumatized her. That's all we can really say. Yeah. That's all we know. She traumatized her because I don't want to think about anything else.
I guess she's lucky to be alive because, with the interactions that happen with the centaurs every time, it seems like they're just hot to trot to kill anyone that's in the forest.
Yeah, they're pissed.
So, I guess
they're
it's a
not
blessing
happy
that she's in the hospital later.
Yeah, I don't really blame them for that. They kind of seem to represent kind of a native people
and a
element,
isolationism.
Yeah,
sort of
trying
thing.
to protect what's theirs,
invading their land.
Yeah,
and calling them names and acting like they're less than because they are not humans, even though they're fully sentient.
Yeah, and they're Jesus. Yeah, I mean, there's some comparisons there that's pretty relevant.
Yeah.
But they're kind of cool. I mean, it's, what's that guy's name? Ferenzi?
I'm never sure I'm saying that name right.
I mean, he was really interesting.
And
they met him early too, but then he gets totally bailed out because he goes to help Dumbledore. So they're like, "You don't belong here anymore." So it's really
you mean kicked out?
Kicked out,
yeah.
Right? Kicked out. It's really
like,
interesting.
I guess it's sort of a bailed out that like he was kind of already getting kicked out for like trying to save Harry and Hermione.
We let Harry and them right on his back, which was a huge no.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it's Harry and Ron or Harry and Hermione.
I think it was just Harry.
I think it had to be book 1.
Yeah.
When they find the unicorn and Voldemort's out there going,
yeah. Friggin' Voldemort. He's so gross. But I think your prediction about Umbridge was right. Like, we definitely see more of just what a nasty piece of work she is in the book, because I think they couldn't get away with putting some of it in the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's true with a lot of books. There's some grit to them that will never get translated to the screen because then they can't market the movie to the same age group that the book was marketed to, which is kind of interesting.
Or some of it they just can't put in, period. Stephen King has a scene like that in It that will never be in the film.
Yeah.
It's pretty intensely wrong, but I've never read the book, so I'm not sure. I've just heard about that scene, and it's never been put. It wasn't put in the TV series, obviously, but it wasn't put in the films either. And from what I understand, it's pretty nasty. Has to do. I don't think it has to do with pedophilia, but I think it has to do with them as teenagers and something happening. But the word I know is orgy. There's an orgy scene in there, and it's really disturbing. That it was cut out of everything except the book.
I wonder what it says about books that like they can get away with more.
They can get away with a lot more because there's no ratings on books. Not that
I guess not. I mean, they do get sort of sorted into categories. So then maybe they'd be like, oh, well, you have a sex scene that's like not fade to black, so this is an adult book, not a young adult.
A bookstore owner is going to be like, well, you can't really read this because it's an adult horror. So it's not in the Playboy section.
Because every bookstore has that.
Yeah, it's hidden.
It's out back by the dumpsters.
Yep.
Okay. Well, overall, what did you think about Book 5?
Book 5 took me a long time to get going, and then when it did, it was pretty interesting. I had a hard time getting into it until Umbridge showed up.
Interesting.
And then it was like she was always creating so many conflicts that it was just like it kept building on top of each other. It just kind of like strung for a while for me. But when that happened, then I was kind of in it. It was kind of like a Two Towers moment. It was like, oh, the first 50 pages, I just can't read it. And it's like, oh, we're dying. Cool, let's keep going. People are dying. Things are getting hurt. I'm interested now. I'm a Gen X.
We dive on just that.
I'm a Gen Xer. We love stuff like this.
Fair enough. I really liked Book 5. I think my favorite is Book 6, so it will be really interesting to talk about that one.
And is Book 6 shorter than Book 5? It seems like
it
might be shorter.
kind of goes like a bell curve for the length of the books. So it's like...
So even 7's lower? Even 7's not as long?
Well, I think it's sort of comparable to 6, but like in general, like it's certainly shorter than 4.
Because I'm using the audiobooks and like Book 5 was like a day, 24 hours. I was like, oh God. Then when I pulled in,
have to listen to
I know, but the thought of trying to listen to a day's worth of audio is like, it's still a long time. But when I got to download Book 6, it was like 18. And I was like, huh. If Hallow is closer to 7, is closer to 6, and I should actually be able to get through them a little. I mean, it just tells me that, okay, now we're getting into the chase here, so we're going to be running. And so it's like, cool, I like running.
I would argue that the first half of Hallows is not at a sprint.
It's
like, I think we'll get
fine.
Like a decent sort of resolution, but I have read fan fiction that was better than Book 7.
Wow. Interesting.
And interestingly, some of it came out before Book 7. So I'm like,
Wow.
maybe we should have just mailed this to someone. But
I just remember the film, and I like the 2-part films
Yeah.
quite a bit. Like, I was really
I think they
enjoyed
handled
them.
it really well in the movies. And
Those fight
they
scenes were-
brought interest to scenes that
Freaking
maybe
Neville. Freaking Neville using his level up and going like, I'm kind of a boss now.
weren't. He was forced to grow up really fast when suddenly the boy savior was gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, Muggles. If you're jonesing for more witchy goodness between episodes, you can check us out on Instagram at Dusty Cauldron Podcast. You can email us at dustycauldronpodcast@gmail.com, or you can check us out at dustycauldronpodcast.com. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening if you want to hear more. And remember, Book 5 is probably one of the more interesting books as far as really sort of peering into the dark, and the dark sort of starting to peer back into you before we get really dark in the next book. And don't forget to stir whatever you've got brewing in your cauldron right now. Bye.
Bye.